Hello, welcome to our video that's going to cover a lot of the different skills you need for the triangle. So just a couple of basic skills we're going to cover, and then think about some different triangle sounds and some different beaters, and kind of go through all of that. So again, I'm going to approach this instrument from a universal percussion principle idea, and those four skills that we're always thinking about, which are grip, lever, playing spot, and stroke, all affect the kind of sound we're going to get. So of course we have to hold this instrument much like we were holding both the tambourine and the cymbals, and we thought about grip on all of those. We again have the issue of holding the instrument with one hand and striking it with the other. I tend to play more with my dominant hand. Remember, we had that difficulty on the tambourine where we would play with the right hand, but then we had to shake with the left, and if your right is your dominant, that puts the shake roll in your non-dominant hand. In this case, when we're playing with one hand on the triangle, we'll play and roll all with that same hand. So we can do it that way. I use these homemade triangle clips out of a coat hanger. I bend these out of a coat hanger. You can also go to the hardware store and get the little grips, and that works just as well. So holding the triangle, I have to do a couple of things. Number one, when you're setting the triangle up, if you're playing with the right hand, like this, the opening of the triangle should be on the left. We will always use the closed end of the triangle. We'll play near that end, and I tend to roll in there as well. So I've put the open end of the triangle over there to the left. I'm holding the triangle up just like I held the tambourine up. When I get ready to play, I want the conductor and I want the other musicians and the audience to see the instrument that they're hearing. It makes it so much more special in that case. So in the left hand, I'm holding the triangle. This little homemade gadget has a place for your fingers to hold it with the index, supported with middle and thumb. Now the important part is that the triangle is free to ring here, like that, and my fingers, ring, pinky, and maybe even the thumb are available to muffle the instrument. Remember how we were talking about on the cymbals, where first we get a good sound, and then we get a good sound while we muffle. First we'll get a good sound here, and then we'll have to think about some muffling concepts. But I have to have these fingers available to muffle. Listen to how long the triangle rings. Goes for a very long time, and so if that was supposed to be a quarter note, 1, 2, 3, 4, I would have to stop the instrument. So that's the important part of the grip with the left, that I'm holding it and ready to muffle it. And in the right hand, just a nice relaxed grip. I tend to hold the snare drum stick. My gripping spot, I break the stick into 3 equal parts and I hold it back there. But I tend to hold, regardless of what triangle beater I'm using, I tend to hold near the bottom, further back on the marimba of the beater, and take advantage of the weight of the triangle beater. That's a very important aspect that we'll cover once we get through some of this. So there's our grip in the left hand, grip in the right hand. Now let's think about the playing spot. So you have to have kind of an idea in your head of what you want the triangle to sound like. And we have, with two ends of the spectrum, we can have a very clear tone, almost like a bell tone on one end of the spectrum. And on the other end of the spectrum, we can have this very rich sound with lots and lots of overtones and not a very clear pitch. I tend to like triangles that don't have a clear pitch and have lots of overtones. Now the 3 triangles I have here, which is the Abel triangle, Allen Abel triangle, I've got the Sabian hand hammer triangles, and the Grover, the 8-inch triangle. They're all a little bit on different parts of that spectrum. The Abel being a slightly clearer pitch, depending on which you get. The Sabian has more overtones, and the Grover is a very low triangle, again with lots of overtones. So that's something that we have to think about. But then when we think about the actual playing spot on the triangle, in general, we'll play on the bottom of the instrument and closer to the closed angle than the other side. So if that's the center, I generally play right about here. So I'm going to play actually across this bottom and see if we can hear. So there's center. There's closer to the corner, the pitch got a little bit clearer right in the corner than it did in the center. And over there, it's kind of dead. That's because it's open. So on this particular instrument, right about there, I think, is a good sweet spot. Every triangle is different. So you really want to be careful that you don't just pick up an instrument and hit it. You really have to find where the right spot is. So you have to try it before rehearsal, before your performance. So I would get this triangle. To be careful that my hanger isn't muffling the triangle at all. And I also tend to play pretty vertical, maybe a little up on the instrument, just like that. A lot of that will have to do with the triangle, so you just have to try those things. So that's the playing. I'll play all of my one-handed rhythms right there. Now we have to think a little bit about rolls. You can roll up in the top or down in the bottom. I like to roll near my playing spot. So if I'm playing here, I just lift a little and I'm playing. If I go up into the center, that takes me too far away from my playing spot. We didn't discuss this as a playing spot. I think on this triangle, this has a clearer pitch than does the bottom. But regardless of what kind of triangle you have, you'll just have to try that. So the roll is a lot like the first part of the tambourine roll we did, where we try to control the shake. In this case, I have to learn to control the up and down. If I muffle the instrument, I have to learn to control that and speed it up to get a good sound. So we've practiced our sustained sounds with the metronome. Let's do that here. 2, 3, 4. So there's whole notes. Here's a half note. Now a quarter, 3, 4. 3, 4. So now in this case, it's kind of tricky. You have to really learn how to end the roll right at the right time. You know, when we were shaking the tambourine, sometimes I would strike the instrument to define the beginning or define the ending. But in this case, I have to end the roll at just the right time. So that takes a lot of practice. You know, where essentially that is an unmetered roll. I'm not counting how many times I go up and down. I'm just going up and down at a fast speed for the proper duration of time. So there's playing in one spot and there's playing some rolls. Now let's think a little bit about these different triangles. It's good to own at least one triangle. You might want to own a few depending on the different things. But the able triangle, as I said, has some overtones, not too many of them. The Sabian triangle it's a little lower in pitch, but has a lot of different overtones. And maybe I'd want to use a bigger triangle in this case. So very low in pitch, but a lot of different overtones. And different conductors or different types of music would require whatever triangle that you like. And it's a large matter of personal taste as well. So let's talk a little bit now about muffling the instrument. And you're going to have to learn to practice doing that. Again, if you're holding any of the clips right, part of your hand is holding, the other hand is available to muffle. So not only do we want to stop the sound after we're done playing, because you don't want the triangle ringing, And like I had mentioned on one of the tambourine videos, the triangle is a unique sound in the ensemble, which means nothing sounds like it, and it will be very loud and very clearly heard at all times. You can always hear the triangle, and sometimes if you don't stop the sound, it's kind of unnecessarily present and ringing. So you'll muffle when you're done playing. You may have to muffle while you're playing like this. So you can see that I have to have the coordination here to play. In this case, I'm thinking 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3, 4, 1, 2. So that's something you'll have to practice as far as that's concerned. Now, the music, the printed music doesn't always tell you that. You have to listen to what the rest of the ensemble is doing. But sometimes the cymbal and the bass drum and the triangle parts aren't clear as far as the length, the articulation of the notes. Last thing I want to address is what beater you should use. So I have a number of beaters here. Some beaters are heavier at one end. This is the Stessel beater. And they have all of the weight there with just a small shaft here. Kind of the older style, this is an old style Ludwig. Actually, the weight is backwards, so you have to figure that out. It's a much shorter beater. So they come in all shapes and sizes and price ranges. But here's the thing that I think is really important to think about. If you have too thin, too small of a beater, you don't get a very rich sound. So this is a thin beater, and I'm playing pretty hard. I think it's better to use a heavier beater and play softer. That versus so I like a beater that has more weight to it. I think it gets the triangle really resonating. So there's some basic skills on the triangle. Again, think about those universal percussion principles: the grip, the stroke, the lever, and the playing spot, and that's how we can identify how to get a good sound regardless of the instrument you're playing.